welcome to video number 1, developing a success strategy. In this particular video, what we're going to be introducing you to are actually not going to be some principles per se at all. Instead, we want to be able to give you some strategies that you can start to implement in your life right now that are going to start making positive differences in terms of your health, well-being, and in your life. Because the reality is you need to stack the deck in your favor because you are going to be up against a whole bunch of circumstances, habits, and the unexpected stresses of life that are going to want to thwart your efforts. So it's good to have a winning game plan right out of the gates. And one of the first things that we need to help you understand is the simple difference that you are not your brain, you are not your mind. There is a difference, and you need to be able to get everything working on the same page. So first up, what am I actually talking about here first and foremost? Okay. First up, we need to recognize that we have this thing that we call a physical body, and it is going to be operated by our computer, which is our brain, our spinal cord, our central nervous system. And in effect, we have 3 levels of operating of the brain. The lowest level that we have right here, it's called the medulla. This is what's called the reptilian brain. Why? Because it's the oldest embryological, the oldest evolutionary part of the brain. This is all about reflex survival. This is what makes all of our organs in the body work on autopilot. It's about flight, flight, freeze, reflexive, fear-driven responses to what? Keep us alive. And this is going to be very important because this is where so much soft wiring occurs that ultimately drives our physiology and our behaviors. So first up, survival level of the brain, the medulla. The second evolutionary level up, located somewhere right about here, it's called the amygdala. And it's part of a region of the brain, it's called the limbic system. And what this is referring to is this is referring predominantly to the processing of emotions. It's also known as the mammalian part of the brain. So these are, do we feel happy? Do we feel sad? Do we feel delighted? Do we feel disgust? Do we feel hopeful? Do we feel anxious? So all of the higher level feelings, not just the fight, flight, survival kinds of things, but more of like the mixed emotions, all of that sort of stuff. And the last most developed part of the brain is what we call the cortex, the upper part, otherwise known as the human part of the brain. And what this is going to be involved in is higher order thought, logic, and most importantly, the ability to create a vision, to be able to see, to be able to project your mind beyond the circumstances of the here and the now. All 3 parts of the brain are necessary in order for you to be able to operate as a normal, functional, and healthy human being. And each one is going to be designed for certain tasks. So if you need something to, for example, be making your heart work to beat faster because you're running, you don't want to have to be consciously thinking about that. But in the same breath is if you are trying to work through a discussion that you're having with your spouse, and shall we say we'll make it a heated discussion, something like that, you don't want your emotions and survival instincts to be running the show, because otherwise you may end up saying or doing something you end up regretting. So point being, there needs to be a balance among all of these different systems in your brain. But beyond that, there's also the higher sense and the higher idea of brain, that being of mind. And we could even take it perhaps one step farther. Point being is that we are not defined solely by our anatomical structures. Because from the moment of life to the moment of death, guess what? It's the same anatomy, but something is different in terms of how that system is operating and how it gives rise to the conscious personality that you are. In other words, life expresses itself through matter. And in this way, we make a distinction then between our brain and between our mind. Now, goes way beyond my pay grade to say which one came first. Is the mind a property of the brain, or is the brain and our body, in fact, a reflection of the mind? Or is it actually a little bit of both, and something that would be far more wonderful, far more divine, far more expressive than we as human beings can ever begin to appreciate and comprehend? Honestly, I'm going to say the latter. That's my opinion. You reflect on that based on your own individual belief system. But one way or another, we do know that we are effectively these two individuals operating within the same body. The physical side of the equation, but then also the mental side of the equation. And the reason that this is going to be matters in particular is because there are going to be times where both mind and brain are working in synchronicity. They are coherent. They are working together constructively towards that common end goal. That is keeping you alive, healthy, and well. But then there are going to be other times where things are at odds with each other. Have you ever had that set of circumstances where you know that this is the right thing to do? The right thing to do is not to eat the whole box of chocolate. But the other part of you is, I really want to eat all that chocolate. The disconnect between what we think and what we feel, and then how that manifests into our actions. And this is why it's important to understand that your body and your brain at times will play tricks on your mind. Let me say that again. Your body oftentimes is going to play a trick on your brain. And in turn, your brain is going to play a trick on your mind. And the consequence of that, especially when your brain plays a trick on your mind, is it's going to propel you, and you're going to have a compulsion to act in a certain way that will produce a certain outcome. And you will oftentimes do it without conscious thought, or at least without checking it against the reality. Why? Because those emotions and those instincts are driving you so strong that they are actually overriding the executive part of your brain that propels you into the action. And then on the other side of it, for whatever it is that you've done, you experience remorse. Why? Because then you've allowed your logical, your conscious mind to be able to come back online, and you're not satisfied with the outcome. Why is this important in terms of health? It's because the vast majority of things in the healthcare arena, people know, you know what the right thing to do is, but you don't do it. And it's because you're listening and using the wrong part of your brain to be able to make the decisions for you. So the first step here, it's not actually to take the action. The first step is the simple realization, the recognition that your body is going to play tricks on your brain, and your brain is going to play tricks on your mind. And what you need to learn how to do is simply to identify that that kind of a process is going on in the first place. Because what that does is that allows you to take a step back, and it allows you to see everything from the bigger perspective. And in that moment, that gives you the ability to make a conscious choice. Is that what I want to do, or do I want to make a different kind of choice, make a different kind of action in this moment that's going to produce then a different and ideally a more desirable outcome? Now, does that mean that you're going to succeed every single time? Well, the answer is no. Why? Because you're a human. And there are times where, yes, it's okay to eat the chocolate. That's going to be okay. But then there are other times you just need to be able to learn to develop this like any other skill. You would try to learn. You have to rewire the soft wiring of your brain. And the way that that happens, as Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, simply put, is learning how to make different decisions. It doesn't always mean you're going to make the right decision, but simply put, making a decision and choosing to do something ever so slightly differently than the way that you did it before automatically gets your brain to have to start rewiring and reworking itself in different ways. And it is then inevitable that you will come to a different point and position there. So simply put, learning to make different kinds of decisions than you've done before. If, for example, you're watching a video like this for the very first time, good on you, because you've made a different kind of decision already. If you're like me, you have to be careful because maybe you like watching these kinds of videos, but how do you actually implement? Do you actually do the exercises and the activities that the person talking at you has you do? If you're like, oh no, I normally just absorb the information, but yeah, I kind of got it. Well, that's the whole point. Dare to do something different with that information. That's how you change the soft wiring of your brain. And that's how you get that cortex to start to be able to override the emotions to then be able to use the information that the reptilian part of your brain is actually giving you so that you can make more coherent, constructive choices that are going to lead you to better outcomes. So a large part of it has to do with deciding, simply put, who is in charge of the situation. It's you. Question is what part of you are you allowing to make the decisions for you? So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to have a look at a few ways that you can actually get your brain and your body to start actually working for you. But what I first want to do is illustrate the formula for failure, which is what we have right here. This is the concept and the idea that what we need is we need to just be perfect. That's all. As long as we don't ever make a mistake, as long as we never fail, there will not be a problem. This is particularly common when we reach New Year's or any time where a person is going to be coming up with a resolution or do something along the lines of I'm going to do like a 30-day or a 60-day or a 90-day challenge. And what I am going to do is I'm going to do this consecutively. So we're going to make something really, really simple here. And let's make the task that you are going to do a 30-minute walk per day. All right? So you do it on day 1. Yay! You do it on day 2. Yay! But something happens. You have to go do something with the kids or work calls you in. You're not able to do it on day 3. Oh, okay. You go all the way back to the beginning. And then, well, it's almost the end of the week. So, okay, no, Friday's a bit of a write-off. But Saturday was good. But then Sunday comes along and there's sports on TV. So, okay, no, that one doesn't really happen. But Monday, tomorrow I will get back on track. And you do. You stay on track for a couple of days, but then life intervenes again. Okay, no, I need to get myself going. And then something else comes up and it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. And guess what? We become discouraged. And if we're trying to do something like that, we feel because we had set ourselves a goal, we'd set ourselves a resolution, I'm going to do this challenge, and I'm going to make sure that I'm doing it consecutively in this way, you feel that you've utterly failed. You feel that this is too hard for you to do, and as a consequence, it gets shifted off to the side, not to be dared challenged again. And what do you learn? What do you take away from that experience? You take away, I can't do that. This is the formula for failure and a self-defeating belief that will most likely prohibit you from wanting to do it again. Why? Because nobody likes to feel like they are a failure. So instead, I want to show you a few different ways you can consider setting yourself goals, challenges, different rules. So first and foremost, don't wait for tomorrow. Yes, we all fall victim to, okay, it's not a very convenient time for me to do this, or I'll do this here today, but then, I'll start tomorrow when it's more convenient. No, start now. If you've got that impulse within you where I need to start eating more healthy. I need to stop doing this. I need to do more activity. When you've got that spark in you in that moment, take advantage of it. You don't know what your circumstances are going to be like tomorrow. Guess what? Circumstances might be even worse. But if you've got that little moment, even if it's 6 p.m. on a Sunday night, and you're like, no, I'm done. I'm not going to have any more. Stop right there. Stop right there. Take the action when you have that inspired urge coming from within you. That is how you change and reverse the momentum. Don't wait for that spark to go quiet. The second thing is a Japanese word which refers to kaizen. And what is this? It refers to the idea of continuous daily improvement. That is, can I be better today than I was yesterday? And that's it. It's not asking for perfection. It's not asking for quantum leaps or quantum bounds. It is saying, can I do a little bit more, 1%, 5%? Can I be a better human being today? Can I be 1% better today than I was yesterday? And I'm going to pick one area of my life. So what would that look like? Well, that would look like, for example, as opposed to eating the whole pizza, it's like, okay, I'm going to have only 3/4 of it. Well, guess what? That is an improvement. It's not perfection, but it is an improvement. And I want you to then appreciate what the effect of compound interest does. So if, for example, you are only working to improve yourself 1% every single day, well, guess what? By the end of the year, you are well over 300% farther than you were when you had started the beginning of the year. And that doesn't mean everything is perfect just yet, but guess what? You took those tiny little steps to make that forward progress. And usually it should be so subtle when you're doing these kinds of things that you're able to, it's like, okay, that was so easy. Yeah, of course I can do that again tomorrow. That's how you know when you are on track. Oftentimes when people, for example, they're wanting to do an exercise regime, they do way too much, they get injured, and as a consequence of that, they stop doing the exercise. When doing exercise, as an example, you want to make it so ridiculously simple for you when you're starting out that, of course, you'd be able to do it again tomorrow. And you would be silly not to, because you didn't hurt yourself at all. So if in the example of, okay, well, I'm going to walk 30 minutes, day one, it's like, can you make the conscious effort? Can you go walk for 1 minute? You're just going to go outside and you're going to walk like this. The next day, could you do 1.5 minutes? Next day, could you do 2 minutes? You don't have to go gangbusters all at once. The small, deliberate action, continuous daily improvement, continuous right action, that builds positive momentum. And especially when you've got all of the other habits that are creeping into your life that are going to want to take over, by making it so silly, so slight, that it's like, of course, that's not going to be an impedance. Yeah, why wouldn't I do this right now? That's how you start making the change till eventually it becomes a part of you. Think of it like this. If you are jumping high off of a dive board and you do a belly flop out like this, it's water, but the resistance is really, really going to hurt, versus if you just dip your hand into that same water very slowly, you don't have all those layers of resistance. The same thing goes with developing new habits. You want to make them so ridiculously slight and small that it's not going to be an impedance in your day whatsoever. Now, what you also need to do are to be able to make goals. And what I've got written here are what are known as SMART goals. They are specific, measurable, achievable. That is, you believe that you can actually do this. That they are realistic, and that you've put a time-based element on them. That this is what you are shooting for. Now, a lot of times, people don't actually accomplish their goals, but the steps that they are taking towards them, especially if, and this is the key one here, if having a reward at the end oftentimes makes all of the difference. So what do I mean by a reward as an example? Well, I work with people all of the time. I ask them this question, okay, what do you want? I want to be fit. I want to be healthy. I want my body to work well. I want to be able to spend time with my kids. I want to be able to work. I want to do all of this good stuff. Okay, so what would be your reward if you actually accomplish that? And they say, yes, I would be able to do all of those things. The irony is that's not actually strong enough motivation in terms of setting a goal and setting a reward. Being fit, healthy is not strong enough, as weird as that sounds. So let me give a contrast here. Let's say that you have a bride-to-be who maybe is carrying a little bit too much around the midsection, and she says to herself this, I need to lose 10 pounds to fit into my wedding dress. Guess what? That's a SMART goal. It's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and she's got a time limit on it. And there is a reward at the end. The reward is she's going to be able to enjoy the wedding day that she has always wanted. She will accomplish that goal. So the same kind of thing. You want to have a SMART goal and you want to have a nice, juicy reward, something that you can really look forward to in the end. Consider even somebody in the Olympics. They don't always like showing up to training. Why? Training's hard. Training hurts. Training's not comfortable. There's other things they would rather be doing. But guess what? If they want that gold medal, that trumps all of the unpleasantries that they're going to have to go through. The reward needs to be bigger than the unpleasantries that you're going to have to go through. That is how you're going to be able to get your brain to start playing tricks on your body that's actually going to help out your mind. That's how you get your mind to override what your body is saying. Your body's saying, stop, this hurts. We don't want to do this. We just want to go back on the couch and do nothing. We would much rather do all of this. But having that vision, the cognitive part of your brain, the cortex, by starting and leading with that, that's how you're going to be able to override when your body's just saying, we don't otherwise want to do this. Now, very important then that you're putting in realistic time expectations. A lot of times, what people will say is something to the effect of, well, I gave it a go for, a day or two, but no, I didn't really feel like it was right for me. Standard physiological change. Doesn't matter what you do, whether it's diet, exercise, breaking a limb, or you're trying to change your physiology, either from a structural, neurological, or chemical standpoint. It takes 6 to 12 weeks before you can actually expect to see a change. Yes, most people do start seeing changes, flickers of hope, within about a 3-week window. But no matter what you do, if you are not willing to give it a fair go for 6 to 12 weeks, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. You have got to be willing to give things a go for that length of time if you're going to be expecting to see genuine change, genuine improvements. What you also need to be very cautious about is avoiding what I call NAGA syndrome. Not as good as. Remember, every single human being on planet Earth, we have different genetics, we have different anatomy, and we have different set of life circumstances, the things that have happened in the past and the things that are still currently going on in our lives. What that means is that we can look at this person over here and we can say, I want to be able to have the outcome that they did. Why is it that they got all of this change and they say, I completely revolutionized my life in 28 days or something like that? But I've been struggling over here. I've been doing this for 6 years and it hasn't been working the same. Different set of life circumstances. I know you might actually be going after the same goal, the body, the function, the whatever it would be like that. But it's most important that you are never comparing yourself to somebody else. Always be comparing yourself to you and your progress. That's the important coming back to Kaizen, continuous daily improvement. It is worthwhile looking in the rearview mirror every once in a while. That is what allows you to see how far you have actually come, especially if you feel like you're just on a hamster wheel. You feel you're not making any forward progress. Guess what? Measure your progress. Look back, not comparing you to anyone else. Look back and compare you to you and see what kind of forward progress have you actually accomplished. And focus on what you have done, not necessarily what you may still have to go through. Yes, you might need to shift. You might need to make a pivot. Just because a team is losing the game at halftime doesn't mean that the game is over. Our body is continuously working to renew, to heal, to repair itself up until our very last breath. As long as you are still breathing, there is still hope for change if then you're willing to learn and navigate through those waters. Now, what I also recommend then is change and play for a different kind of game here. So I'm going to give you a little example. You remember in the previous one where we talked about doing the daily walk? And we made it a binary outcome. That is, you either did 30 minutes or you didn't. And you made yourself a challenge if you wanted to be able to do that consecutive days. But you didn't set yourself a goal that was big enough to overcome the unpleasantries of what you had actually going on. So let me show you a different way of actually looking at it. Give yourself partial credit, first and foremost. And do be sure that you're writing this down. It's not good enough to make a mental exercise about this. It's important to say that you are going to be keeping track of this, measuring and seeing your forward progress. You know, like those little charity drives. So they show we've been able to collect this amount here. Well, in the beginning, it's not really seeming to make too much progress, but there comes a point then where the momentum changes. The same thing goes with accomplishing your goals, especially when you start to develop streaks. So let me show you what we've done here. Let's say that on the very first day, yes, you walked your 30 minutes. The second day, you did also walk your 30 minutes. But on day 3 and day 4, you didn't. So because you did accomplish your goal, you got full marks. The other ones, you didn't get any. Okay, so be it. You didn't get your top streak, but you've not gone all the way back to 0 either. You still keep your 2 points. Then on the Saturday, you go out and you only were able to do 15 minutes. Okay, partial credit. The next day, you didn't do any. Monday, you got back on track. Okay, so you got another one. Tuesday, you only did a half. Okay, but you are not making it, again, that's an all or nothing kind of game. So here you are after effectively the first 2 weeks, and you would have 1, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4, 4.5. You've got 4.5 points, as opposed to the other way that you did it before. You lost your streak right here, and you supposedly go back to 0. As if the positive action that you had made, the efforts to make the change didn't count. Guess what? They do count because they are accumulative over a period of time. Give yourself credit for what you have done. Focus on your successes. So by keeping track of your successes and willing to give yourself partial credit, let all of that add up and assign yourself that goal and that reward. So hypothetically, let's say that your goal is to get 50 or it's to get 100 points. Now, yes, if you do your walk every single day, 1 point, guess what? You'll get there in 100 days. But if you miss a few days, so what? It'll take you a little bit longer to get there, but guess what? You're still going to end up where you want to go. Maybe a little longer than you would hope, than your original goal was, but I'm willing to bet that when you start getting on a bit of a momentum boost, and when you can see, hey, I'm starting to get closer to this, that again, you're using your vision, the big part of your brain there, to actually be making the decision for you, focusing on the positive stuff, focusing on the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, versus focusing on where you fell down, your failures. Remember what we've said before? It's that your character is not necessarily defined by your successes or by your failures. It's defined by how you respond in those moments. So in particular, you've had a couple of bad days. So what? You haven't lost your momentum. Pick yourself back up and do again the best that you can. Even if, nope, I'm not doing the full amount, but I am doing more than I did yesterday. That is how you make change. That is how you be able to start working from your mind rather than working from your body and your brain. That's how you produce change in your life. Now, I do also recommend, when it comes to setting goals, don't do something that's going to break the bank, but pick a goal. This is usually something where, yes, you would be able to do this. You would be able to afford this item or this experience, but there have been all of these other reasons why you haven't done it just yet right now. That's usually the perfect goal right there. Something that you could do for yourself right now, but that you have been deliberately putting off. Assign that as your end target and make sure that when you've done those actions, that you actually do reward yourself. Now, I also want to add one other thing in here as well. It's wise to not focus on outcomes in terms of what they actually are. It's much better to be focusing on the action. So what would be an example of this? Okay, we used the bride earlier, saying, okay, we need to lose 10 pounds in a certain period of time. Well, you can actually lose 10 pounds in an extremely unhealthy way. Oftentimes people say, I want to be, skinny. Doc, what's the cure to that? Easy. Stay up all night, smoke, drink, do drugs. You'll get skinny really quick. You're not going to get healthy, though, is the truth. So especially, and we use this because it's a classic example, when a person wants to lose weight, they want to lose 10 pounds. But in the process, they get discouraged because as they're starting to get more fit, they're actually putting on more muscle. And muscle, because it's very dense and it contains a lot of water, it means that they don't actually lose the weight, but they are actually getting much more fit in the process. So instead, what I would recommend is not to work on an objective goal, but to work on a procedural goal. What do I mean by procedural goal? A procedural goal would be, I did a 30-minute workout irrespective of the outcome. It doesn't matter whether you gained a pound, lost a pound. It doesn't matter if it took you, you only walked a mile, or if you managed to walk 2 miles in that period of time. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you did the right action, irrespective of the outcome. Because, as we said, the continual right action inevitably is what leads to the desired outcome. If we try to focus too much on the outcome without the action, again, we're setting ourselves up for failure, disappointment. So as you are, and this is what my challenge from having you watch this particular video is going to be, is start thinking about some of the different things in your life where you might be able to just make that little tweak in your strategy that's actually going to help so that your mind and your brain and your body are working for you, working towards your goal, rather than working against all of the challenges and allowing the external circumstances to dictate and then ultimately to define what your failures are going to be. It's a subtle little change, but it oftentimes makes a very, very profound difference. And as we said, especially when you're looking to actually make change in your life, you are up against a very formidable foe. You know all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses, all of your touch points, all of the running lists of things you've done well and all of the things that you haven't done well in the course of your life. You need to make sure then that you're actually adopting strategies that are going to maximize your chance of success. Hopefully you found something valuable in this particular video. This one here is going to be a little bit longer than all of the others, don't worry, but that's again because we have a good chunk of tangible steps that we really needed to cover that you can start to use and adopt then as we're going to be looking at the principles through the next of these videos. So thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.